So somebody shared this on the Reddit subsection. This is Robert Reich. Now, Robert Reich, I don't always agree with him on everything. I agree with him on some things. Sometimes I think in particular, when it comes to the Democratic Party, he goes very soft on them at times. Not all the time, but he goes very soft on them a lot of the time. And when he's not going soft at them, he kind of pretends like they don't know what the problem is, or pretends like this isn't by design. Like at one point, he made a video where he called out money in politics, and he called out how the Democrats seem more concerned with fundraising than they are concerned with winning, which is true, because the Democratic establishment knows that whether they win or lose, the gravy train keeps rolling. Democrats' first priority at the establishment level is not winning. It just isn't. I mean, that's just a fact. Their first priority is keeping the donors happy, which bleeds into their second priority, which is stifling progressives, because you got to stifle progressive policy to keep the donors happy. Their third priority, and it's a distant third, is maybe beating a Republican or two. That's just true. I mean, what do you call a system where people have money on both teams? Wall Street buys both parties. What would you call a horse race if somebody just bet on every single horse? It's fixed. It's rigged. But here's a video by Robert Reich that I think is pretty right on. Someone shared this in the Reddit subsection, and I think it's worth going through. I think it's pretty cool. All right, so let's watch some of this here. Oh wait, let me put it. Yeah, there we go. Let me put it here. All right, so here we go. There's Robert Reich. He's going to talk about the 4 biggest right-wing lies about inequality.
Not seen since the days of the 19th century.
Here, let me restart that.
Even though we're heading toward levels of inequality not seen since the days of the 19th century robber barons.
And also pretty much potentially since like ancient Egypt days. Richard Wolff kind of talks about that, the economist Richard Wolff. But anyway.
Right-wing conservatives keep lying about what's happening and what to do about it.
And they lie about everything else.
Here are their 4 biggest lies about inequality, followed by the truth.
The deep state, meanwhile, Muslims are out of the
Lie number 1. The rich and CEOs are America's job creators, so we dare not tax them. The truth is the middle class and poor are the job creators through their purchases of goods and services. If they don't have enough purchasing power because they're not paid enough, companies won't create more jobs and the economy won't grow. The giant Trump Republican tax cut for corporations and the rich hasn't trickled down to ordinary Americans. It's just made the rich even richer. Lie number 2.
Yeah, so that's kind of an obvious one that we all know. It's trickle-down economics has not worked ever. It hasn't worked ever. Now, keep in mind, when he makes these videos, he's making them for a general audience. I know, like a lot of you that tune into this show all the time, you might be like, wow, that's really preaching to the choir. Yeah, but he's making this for a general audience. So he's calling out these lies, and he's doing it with, with pretty neat drawings. I wonder if he actually does that in the classroom, like does those drawings. I'd imagine he does. Obviously, he does not go that fast. I know he's not drawing in real time. But anyway, let's watch more of the video.
People are paid what they're worth in the market, so we shouldn't tamper with pay. Wrong. 4 decades ago, CEOs of big companies got 30 times the pay of typical workers. In 2017, they got 361 times their workers' pay.
So another thing to add to that, in other countries, it's not near as severe. 361, nearly 400 to 1. That's what a CEO makes to the average worker. In other countries, that's unheard of, by the way. So not only have we gotten increasingly bad since the 1970s, which, by the way, what happened in the 1970s, that's when the rise of neoliberalism started. And neoliberalism, again, is basically give to the CEOs, give to the rich, Reaganomics, trickle down, quote unquote, which hasn't worked at all, and don't have any protections for workers. That's essentially what neoliberalism is all about. Since that started rising in the 70s, which there's a great history by Noam Chomsky on the history of neoliberalism, started in the 70s. Didn't start with Reagan, got amplified via Reagan, but started in the 70s, even pre-Carter, and has just kept moving. And it's all I've known in my entire lifetime. We have just lived in rugged neoliberalism. And now we're at the point where it's 361 plus to 1. Unheard of in other countries. All right.
Not because they've done such a great job, but because they control the compensation committees of their boards. They're using corporate profits to buy back even more shares of stock, so their total compensation rises even more. And they're monopolizing the economy at the same time. Meanwhile, most American workers earn nearly the same today as they did 40 years ago, adjusted for inflation.
Look at that. Look at that. Here, let me large screen that. Look at this. From 1964, median wage has barely budged in decades. In decades. 1964 to 2018. Has the cost of groceries stayed the same? Nowhere close. There's studies out there where they'll show you via a cart. Like they'll have a grocery cart and they'll be like, this is the amount of groceries you could get like 10, 20 years ago for this amount of money. This is the amount you get now. And you see like 4 or 5 things. I mean, I've noticed that in my lifetime, and I'm sure all of you have too. Like I remember, grocery shopping with my mom when I was a kid and what a certain amount of money would get as far as groceries go. Because I would hear the total at the end, and I was, cognizant of numbers, obviously, and, because I was like 8 or whatever. And then I go to the grocery store now, and it's like, holy shit. Look at that. Decades. From the 60s. Decades is putting it gently. I mean, we're talking generations. Generations. This is broken. So broken.
They're working less hard now, but because they don't have strong unions bargaining for them as they did then.
As he said, it's not because they're not working hard. In fact, people are working even more, by the way. It used to be in the 60s and before, when there were strong unions, it used to be one job gave you enough to live. Now, most people work 2 and 3 jobs. And we know this.
Lie number 3. Any child can make it in America with enough guts, gumption, and intelligence, so we don't need to do anything for poor and working class kids. The truth is, we already do next to nothing for poor and working class kids. Their schools don't have enough teachers or staff. Their textbooks are outdated. They lack science labs. Their school buildings are falling apart. We don't help with costs of childcare. We don't invest in early childhood education. We spend less educating poor kids than we do educating kids from wealthy families. Lie number 4.
So that can be summed up the way Carlin summed it up. They call it the American dream because you have to be asleep to believe in it. Hey, pull yourself by your own bootstraps and the sky is the limit. Actually, it's not even the limit. You could be an astronaut maybe, but hey, guess what? We're not going to give you anything. And that's true. And they're gutting education. It keeps getting worse and worse and worse. All right. So anyway, lie number 4. Let's see. What's the last lie here?
4. Increasing the minimum wage will result in fewer jobs, so we shouldn't raise it. In fact, studies show that in states where the minimum wage has been increased, the number of jobs increases because minimum wage workers have more money to spend, resulting in more jobs, and also saving employers money on employee turnover. America's lurch toward widening inequality can be reversed, but doing so will require bold political steps, and the American public must know the facts. So don't listen to the right-wing lies about inequality. Know the truth and act on it. What do you think? What are some other lies about inequality you've heard? Let us know in the comments.
So there you have it. That was a good video by Robert Reich. I would go a step further, and I would say it's not just also right-wing lies. It's also realize that when he said bold political steps, underline that bold. In other words, incrementalism ain't going to cut it. There's nothing pragmatic about an incremental solution to a catastrophic problem. That's one thing I would add to that. But overall, very good video by Robert Reich. I like that. Thank you for sharing it.
Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. You can tweet me an article at Ron Placone. We'll go through it together and make it our own. Get your news